We reject these political shenanigans out of hand. At this point, we'll open it up for questions. No, you know, if Ohioans, neutral Ohioans, learned anything on Tuesday, it's that those of us who care about families and the middle class, whether they serve in the legislature or in courthouses across the state, these kinds of direct offenses on working families will be rejected. They'll be rejected by referendum, or they'll be rejected when a constitutional amendment is prepared and submitted, and then rejected at the polling locations across the state. That's what Tuesday taught us.
But issue 3.
And I know Representative Heard has her thoughts about women and minorities in the employment workplace, and the fact that in collective bargaining, those that enjoy the ability to belong to a collective bargaining unit, the ability to receive a higher wage, to proceed up the ladder, is much more available than otherwise, Representative.
Well, I'll be brief. The right to work doesn't guarantee rights to the workers, nor does it protect the access that women and minorities have had. I mean, you know, unions and collective bargaining have closed the gap for women from, I think it's like 32% to 5% in terms of wages, the difference, the disparity of wages between men and women. It's created access and opportunity for minorities to gain access to jobs and to get better wages. You know, what we have protects workers, it protects their wages, it protects them physically on the job, and, you know, lower wages doesn't make for better employees. I mean, I think you'll find that people will start to leave to look for better opportunities.
Is there any evidence that in these right-to-work states that exist that people leave the unions, or do they get better benefits from the unions and decide to stay there out of, you know, voluntarily?
Well, it depends on whether or not the Koch brothers are funding the study, or if the study is prepared by a neutral observer, a neutral organization. As we just learned, we spent the better part of 3 or 4 months listening to a governor with the lowest approval ratings in the country trying to convince Ohioans that every public employee pays less than 15% of their health care costs and 10% of the pension costs. A closer examination, we know that more than 90% of public employees pay more than those two amounts. We understand that when we peel back the layers, the fact of the matter is, as Representative Heard has pointed out, opportunities exist in the workplace, both in the private and public sector, at a much larger level, greater level, with the ability to collectively bargain. In Ohio, that has been proven the case. Let me remind everybody that over the course of the final 14 months of Governor Strickland's term, unemployment rates were continuing to drop, and a commitment to investing in education and the infrastructure was seeing a return on those investments. Today in Ohio, as we know, we have a governor who sees it much differently. It's his way or the highway, the proverbial bus. I think Ohioans will turn back this proposed initiative as they turn back Senate Bill 5.
Issue 3 passed, and one reason people think is because it had the word freedom in it. This amendment, if it got to the ballot, would have that word freedom and a fairly simple phrase at the beginning, just like issue 3. Do you worry that it might pass because of that, or at least would have a good chance because of that word freedom?
Well, I reject the premise that issue 3 passed entirely because of the substance or the first sentence. In the issue, it passed because those of us who care deeply about health care know that it's largely unenforceable and has no enforcement as it relates to the President health care initiative. The fact of the matter is, if you're a breast cancer survivor in this state, you know that President Obama and the Democrats in the Congress have ended employment bigotry so that pre-existing conditions are no longer standing in the way of those women, for instance, from getting a new job because the old job they had health care and they wouldn't be able to get future health care. I think it's a resonating response on this issue, but because we wanted to focus on issue 2 and expend the resources necessary to achieve victory, as I pointed out yesterday. Additionally, that issue 3 was largely unenforceable with the exception of Medicaid, Medicare, and pre-existing programs, and we're about to go through that process of determining whether or not issue 3 has that impact. That issue had no merit. As it relates to this particular proposed referendum, we'll wait and see what the ballot board does and the language that's presented, whether it's in 2012 or 2013, and we will fight that fight then. We recognize here in Ohio that Ohioans enjoy a 5-day work week and weekends, 40-hour work week. We have higher wages than other competing places in the country, and if you were just look across the border in some of our neighboring communities, we have a lower unemployment rate.